Hi there, I'm Scott from Buy the Brush Miniatures, and today I'm going to show you how to start collecting Eldar Craft Worlds. So we're going to be doing this in the normal format. I'm going to talk you through first 500 points, then the next 500 points to build it up to 1000 points, and then finally how you can create a 2000 point list. So this is your first 2000 points, and we're just going to do it in them increments because those are the sort of game sizes that you tend to play with in 40k. Just as always, first of all, you want to get the Codex because this contains the majority of the rules that you need. Certainly all the ones you need to actually play the army, so there's no worries after that once you've got the book. And then once you've got that, you can start getting some models to actually build the army. For the first 500 points, we're going to be building a patrol detachment, and the HQ for that patrol detachment is going to be the Spirit Seer. Now the reason for this is because this first 500 points contains quite a lot of Spirit Host, because personally I just really like how hard that they can hit. So this is going to be the HQ because Spirit Seers, they sort of really kind of buff the Spirit Host units and make them even stronger than they already are. Plus they're also a very useful psyker to have in your Eldar army. And the troops for the patrol detachment is going to be Eldar Guardians. And these will come in a box of 10, so you'll have 10 Eldar Guardians in total for that unit, plus one of these weapons platforms, which you can put any of the Eldar heavy weapons on. For this example, we have a Bright Lance. These are sort of the basic troops of the army. Well, I say sort of, they just are the basic troops of the army, but their weapons, they have a rule where if on a 6 to wound, I believe it is to wound, the AP is so high that pretty much nothing is going to be able to make an armor save against it unless they have either an invulnerable save or a 2+ armor save to start with, in which case they'll be able to make a 6+ save with that AP -4. So it's basically, if you're familiar with 7th edition rules, it's basically Rend. The only downside with these weapons is that the guns that they have, they're only 12 inches of range, and that's really not a lot of range in 40k. So you do have to kind of run them in and get them quite close, and then they can just blast the hell out of most things. The plus side of that is that they are really fast. The whole army as a whole is very, very fast. So Eldar Guardians as your basic troops, nothing to worry about. Just all around quite a good troop. And I said we're going to get some Spirit Hosts, so now you're going to get yourself some Wraith Guard. And these come in a box of 5, so that's one box of Wraith Guard, and you can give them either of the 2 loadout options because both of them are really, really hard hitting. And again, the guns are short range, but once you get them in nice and close, it's really gonna just really, really hurt the enemy pretty much. They're quite slow. As you can see, they're quite big, so they're quite slow. So the best thing to do is to get a transport for them, but not in this first 500 points, because first of all, you just want to get some actual units that are playable in the game. And this combination, I think, works nice and well. You've got your fast, maneuverable infantry to go and capture objectives, and then these guys to take out anything on other objectives you want, or maybe just defend some objectives, a bit like the Terminators for Space Marines kind of. You might have noticed the list is lacking any kind of melee weapons, so we're going to include some Wraith Blades. So these are the alternate construction for Wraith Guard, and these are pretty much just Wraith Guard but with a melee weapon. The 2 options for this are either 2 swords or an axe and a shield. Both options are very good. The 2 swords let you deliver more attacks, so that's why I've gone for them in this configuration, but you can alternatively go for the axe and the shield, and that just makes them really survivable. They really, really don't tend to die when they've got that loadout. Now we're going to go into the next 500 points to build your list up to 1000 points. For that, we're going to need 2 more troops choices and 1 HQ choice. And for the troops choice, we're going to go with even more Guardians, so another box of 10 Guardians. So again, visually, I've just got, I think it's 7 on the screen. Yeah, 7. And as the example for the platform, I've given them an Aeldari missile launcher this time, just so you can see some of the different options you've got. But you will, again, as I reiterate, have 10 of these. Now the second troops choice we're going to add is Dire Avengers. Now these are pretty much very similar to Guardians, except they do have an Exarch, which is sort of like a sergeant in the Eldar army, and they have various loadouts you can give them. Their guns are pretty much the same as the Guardians, but they have a much longer range, so these are sort of a level up from the Guardians, if you will. These do, however, come in boxes of 5, and I recommend getting 2 of them boxes so that you have 10 Dire Avengers, because they're so much more effective in units of 10, because they're just as squishy as Guardians, essentially. Kind of. They've got a few rules to make them a bit less squishy, but they do die and you just want a sort of harder hitting version of the Guardians that you can put in your army, and for that you're going to need 10 of them rather than 5, in my opinion. Now for that final empty HQ slot that we need to fill in, we're going to be using Jane Zar. And now this is a named character. She is the Howling Banshee's Phoenix Lord. That's the one, I forgot what it was for a minute. But just get Jane Zar, and the reason for that is because I also recommend now at this point filling up an elite slot with some Howling Banshees. And the Howling Banshees and Jane Zar, they work so well together, because Howling Banshees themselves are very deadly as a melee unit, but Jane Zar just makes them so much more deadly with the buffs that she offers to them. Again, these come in boxes of 5, but I do recommend getting a box of 10 because they're just more effective in large numbers. It's kind of how it is with Eldar. They come in small numbers, but if you have larger numbers of the same thing, they tend to be a lot more effective. So that there at this point is actually 1,000 points. So now we're going to go into the next 1,000 points to double up your army and turn it into a full 2,000 point list. Now the first thing I recommend to progress to 2,000 points is, as I said before, some transport, particularly for the Spirit Host that we had earlier on. And here we have a particularly dusty Wave Serpent, because it is, in my opinion, the best transport option. I think it's possibly the only actual dedicated, like, this is the transport vehicle for Eldar. But it's overall a very good transport vehicle. You can stick a few Spirit Hosts in here and then just jump them across the board, and then they can get out and do their job without waiting a couple of turns beforehand to meander up the board. Now the Eldar are actually a very psychic army, and unfortunately at this point we haven't actually included many psychers, so I thought I'd just add another one of them in. And I've actually chosen the Hemlock Wraith Fighter, and the reason for this is because it's not very often in 40k that you actually see a psyker in the form of a vehicle, let alone a fighter jet, so I just think that is just so badass. You can actually open the windshield and see the guy inside. There you go, there he is, Mr. Magic. I just think overall it's just quite cool. It's quite powerful as well because it's got the same flamers that you can give the Wraithguard guys. Again, this was quite dusty, unfortunately. I'm gonna have to take the duster to my shelf, it seems. But yeah, include yourself one of these because I think it's just a really great way to actually get psychic powers around the board as well. So it's board domination along with some psychic ability, so it's really quite nice. Speaking of board control, now I said Eldar are fast, but nothing in the Eldar army is faster than Wind Riders. These are the jet bikes of the Eldar army, and I recommend getting 2 boxes of these because they come in boxes of 3. Having 6 of these guys just zooming around the board, taking objectives and taking out threats in the enemy army is just really handy to have. So get yourself 2 boxes of Wind Riders and you can give them any loadout. These ones in fact actually all have different guns, and that is something you can do with Wind Riders, which is really nice to see. Now one thing we're missing at this point is some big scary imposing models, and I think for that maybe include yourself a Wraith Lord. And what these are actually really good for is they can be good at range and at close combat if you give them the Ghost Glaive, which is this sword that this one has, and they can, as you can see, hold plenty of guns. They're really good for taking on other sort of things of this level, like, you know, sort of medium to large sized monsters, and it's just a cool thing to have in the army because, as you can see, it's quite a cool model in my opinion, despite how old it might be. Now at this point I think this army could use a little bit more firepower, and for that I'm actually gonna take a look into one of the Eldar tanks, and this is the Falcon. The Falcon has I think you can give it any gun here, but I've opted for the Bright Lance, and then it's got basically a bigger version of the Bright Lance as well as, I think, either the option for twin shuriken catapults or a shuriken cannon down there, and a few other upgrades the same that the other vehicles can have as well. And the Falcon I think is just a really good tank for taking out bigger units, like, you know, big vehicles, big monsters. It's a good anti-vehicle unit to have in the army, and that's why I've included it in this list. Now the final thing we're going to add to round off the list is another group of Aspect Warriors. Now unfortunately these ones haven't got an upgraded model, but they still look so cool, and that is Striking Scorpions. And the reason for this is 2 reasons. A, because I just really like the aesthetic of them, the whole like predator look that they all have, but also just because I think it's really quite handy to have these sneaky guys sort of sneaking around and then just taking things out, kind of surprising the enemy. And of course along with them we're going to actually have Karandras, their Phoenix Lord, as well. Now you might notice my Karandras is a little bit different, and that's because I'm not a massive fan of the Games Workshop Karandras model because it's just so outdated and looks a bit derpy. So this is the Artel W Shadowhunter Prime model. I'll leave a link in the description to this. It's just such a cool looking model, and it just really makes these guys look like they've got a really nice looking leader, I think. But yeah, so that is 2,000 points of Eldar, and it's a great starting list, I think, in my opinion. Personally, I really enjoy playing Eldar because it's quite dynamic, it's quite fun to do. They're quite different to a lot of armies, but they can play in the same sort of way because you can't just run them as like, oh yeah, here's my Eldar gun line, because, you know, the standard 12-inch range that all the guns have, it's very hard to do that. So you do have to play a bit like Space Marine-y kind of, and mix the units up, get some good close combat, some good range, and I think we've done that just here with that list. And with that said, I really hope this video has helped you start your Eldar army, and if it has, please leave a like and subscribe. You can also alternatively do that just if you enjoyed the video and listening to me talk about one of the coolest armies in 40k, I think. You can also support us by following the links in the description to our Patreon, where you can support us for a little fee every month. I say a fee as if it's something you have to pay. Of course, you don't have to go there and do it. It's all entirely up to you. And there's also a link to our Instagram where you can see some pictures of some of the things we've painted. Might be quite interesting to go take a look at that. And with that said, thank you very much for the view, subscribe for more, and I'll see you later.